Thee I invoke, the Bornless One. Thee that didst create the earth and the heavens. Thee that didst create the night and the day. Thee that didst create the darkness and the light. Thou art Osoronophorus, whom no man has seen at any time. Thou art Jabus, thou art Japos. Thou hast distinguished between the just and the unjust. Thou didst make the female and the male. Thou didst produce the seed and the fruit. Thou didst form men to love one another and to hate one another. I am Moshe, thy prophet, unto whom thou didst commit thy mysteries, the ceremonies of Israel. Thou didst produce the moist and the dry, and that which nourisheth all created life. Hear thou me, for I am the angel of Paphro Osoronophorus. This is thy true name, handed down to the prophets of Israel.
Preliminary Invocation, the Lesser Key of Solomon. It's Saturday, December 31st, 2022, last video of the year. My name is Kessie Ian Anderson, and welcome back to another edition of Heresiarch, where I break down my opinion as to why Moses is the ultimate weak link, and all the source of the strife that we are going through today. My concern is that very first prayer that I used, that I read, talks about the prophet Moses. King Solomon got his information from Moses. The problem that I had as a Mormon, they have their own doctrinal teachings about when Moses came down from Mount Sinai. As a Mormon, you could live your entire life and never understand this information because you would never have a reason to look into it. The trigger or the catalyst for me to look into this was when I heard about the Noahide laws. Something inside of me resonated that the second I heard about the Noahide laws, I knew, something in me just knew that these were the most important laws to understand. But as a Mormon, you would never, ever understand or even know to look for them. Because in Mormon doctrine, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai and he brought his first set of tablets and he saw the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, he dashed them on the ground. According to Mormonism, that was the higher law. And they have their own opinion as to what that higher law is. So you could go your entire time in that religion and never come across the Noahide laws. You'll learn a little bit. You'll learn a veneer of Judaism, but you'll never understand the implications of what Judaism actually is and how Moses and Solomon are such massive forces. Moses is the premier force driving Judaism, in my opinion. But the story goes like this, according to Judaism. When Moses was on Mount Sinai, and even then he was up there multiple times, total 80 to 85 days. It wasn't just a one-off moment where he went up, got the 10 commandments from God, and came back down. According to the Noahides, according to Judaism, Hasidic Jews, and Judaism in general, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he brought the first set of tablets. Those were the Noahide laws. So as a Mormon, you could go your entire life never knowing about these because of their doctrine that says it was the higher law. And the people just weren't ready for it. Well, according to Judaism, the Noahide laws were the higher law as well, but they were a bit different from the 10 commandments that were given subsequently when he brought down the second set of tablets. Now, I understand Christianity, and I can use the Old Testament and prove in the writing that it says explicitly the first tablets were literally the same as the second. And that can be used to discredit the Noahide laws. My only problem is Christianity is not the power of this world. This world is ran and controlled by Judaism and the Noahide laws. And the Noahide laws from 1991 House Joint Resolution, I believe it was 104, George Herbert Walker Bush signed the Noahide laws into our body of law. Also, our judicial system is based on the Talmud. So if you understand, again, going back to Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, the written information in the Torah, the written Torah, is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But that wasn't the only information that Moses received while he was up on the mountain communing with whatever he was communing with. I will argue it was not God. I will argue it was a different entity, but that's for later. So while Moses was up there communing with this Elohim or guardians, he was given oral information that he shared with his elites and his closest to him. That became the Talmud. That oral information was passed down from mother to son, father to son, until it got collated and written down by the rabbis later. That is the Babylonian Talmud. That's 6,200 pages. But most of the rabbis, most of Judaism, lays the Zohar at the feet of Moses as well. The Vatican has a huge amount. The Bible just means collection of books. What I'm saying too is there's even more Talmud that we do not have written down that is secret for them, even further. Also, it's admitted in this book, The Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon the King. Mathers did not include certain information that he just didn't want to put in, the black magic that Solomon practiced. That gets into the necromancy. That gets into the blood sacrifice. That's why when I pay attention to Judaism, it gets me concerned. The big concern I have with Judaism, because they do not have a belief in Jesus, sacrifice is still on the table. So for Christians that believe in Jesus as the great and last sacrifice, there's a doctrine in Judaism where people who are mixed multitude, people who are not blood Jews, they are animals in human form. And if you do not accept Jesus' sacrifice, sacrifice is still on the table. And when I say sacrifice, it's not just limited to what we consider animals. We have to look at it from their perspective. I am saying human sacrifice is still in play. I am saying human sacrifice, these dark Kabbalistic arts, MK Ultra, the mind and the brain. I'm going to go into further information about that when I read some more of this book. People think of demons. People think of Satanism. They think of it as conjuring spirits and that's how it works. Well, it's mental. It's in the mind. What is pharmakia? Pharmakia literally translates into sorcery, mind control, the use of narcotics and drugs, entheogens, which is drugs used in a religious capacity to manipulate and twist your perceptions. But what is perception? If it's in your mind and it is real to you, how can anybody else sway you otherwise? If you're schizophrenic and hearing voices, who's to say those aren't real? To you, those would be real. If you are under the influence of a substance or something, that is very real. This leads into why I have issues. So as a Christian, Christians could look at that and be like, well, that's their interpretation. Well, I'm sorry, but I can't just wave it away. If Moses was such a big influence to be the source of this doctrine, and I call it doctrine because it is part of Judaism. It is Kabbalah. It is Zohar, which is the Book of Radiance, which is one of their other books, not quite on par with the Talmud. It's worse than the Talmud. The main The zealot believers of Judaism accept the Zohar as much on par, if not more, than the Talmud. And if you do not understand this, you don't understand the world that we're living in. Now, I bring up King Solomon. If you look at the pentacles, if you look at the sigils, if you look at the rings of power, when I say rings of power, I'm not talking about Lord of the Rings on your finger ring. I'm talking about the pentagrams. I'm talking about Star of Remphan, the sigils that they scribe on the floor that are used to summon the demons. I'm also going to say that when you look at those sigils, King Solomon had access to higher technology. And I am going to argue, it's going to sound very crazy, but angels and demons in Judaism are not what Christians think of angels and demons. So I'm going to take a second and play a clip, a couple clips put into this video by a guy named Ronald Bernard and some interviews that he gave. Ronald Bernard, to the truther community, we call him the Illuminati banker because of the information that he dropped about his time behind the scenes doing finance for the cabal. What I found interesting is that the person who introduced him to this system just said, all you have to do from here on out is pay me 10%. So he was paying tithes. Their system, the cabal system, uses tithing as a method. He was also said he went to some of their church meetings. He thought it was ironic. He saw the orgies, he saw the sex, and he just laughed and played it off. But it didn't get so fun when they introduced the children.
Zo zeggen, ik zat in een opleiding tot psychopaat en ik ben gezakt. Ik heb het niet gehaald, ik ben geen psychopaat geworden. Dat geweten brak door. En het ergste wat mij overkomen was, dat was omdat ik zo'n goed aanzien had, zo succesvol was en zo vertrouwd was met mensen in deze wereld die dus op dat niveau speelden. Ik moet ook zeggen dat de meeste van deze mensen hadden een geloof wat afwijkt van het gemiddelde. Hè? Je hebt katholieken, je hebt protestanten, je hebt allerlei soorten van religies. Deze mensen, de meeste daarvan, hadden een Luciferiaans geloof. En dan kan iedereen zeggen, ja, geloof bestaat niet en God bestaat niet, alles bestaat niet. Nou, voor die mensen was het de waarheid en de werkelijkheid. Hun diende dus iets onstoffelijks. Hun diende wat zij noemden Lucifer. Mm-hmm. En ik kwam dus ook in die kringen. Alleen ik lachte erom, want het waren voor mij gewoon klanten. Dus ik kwam in wat ze noemden Satanskerken.
Ik wou zeggen, we hebben het nu over het satanisme.
Ja,
Okay.
Ik kwam dus in Satanskerken, maar ik kwam zeg maar op route even langs, even buurten. En daar was dan op dat moment een heilige mis, hun heilige soorten mis. En dat was met blote vrouwen en wat drank en dit en dat. En ik vond het alleen maar leuk. Hmm. Ik hechtte weinig of geen geloof aan hun geloof. Of ik was er eigenlijk niet eens van overtuigd dat het überhaupt allemaal wel bestond.
Het was meer een schouwspel voor jou?
Ja, ik zag gewoon de donkerte en de slechtheid en de diepte daarvan zit in de mens zelf.
Ja.
Ik koppelde het nog niet zo. Maar ook die kringen verkeerde ik dus in, omdat als gast zeg maar, omdat ik vond het allemaal wel leuk. Al die blote vrouwen en al die dingetjes die daar speelden. Het was het vrije leven. Maar er kwam een moment, toen werd ik dus uitgenodigd, daarom vertel ik dit ook, om mee te gaan doen aan offers in het buitenland. Dat was het breekpunt. Kinderen.
Oké. Dat werd je gevraagd?
Ja, ik kon het niet.
Wil je even
En
stoppen?
toen...
Wil je even stoppen trouwens? Of niet?
Nee.
Oké.
En toen begon ik langzaamaan eigenlijk in te storten. Ik had zelf als kind nogal wat meegemaakt.
Ja.
En dat raakte mij zo. Alles ging om.
and then they expected him to sacrifice a child. In this interview, he explains an interesting insight into the Bible. So he was running around with the cabal, the elite. He says the only reason why he's still alive is because he refuses to name names. I guess I get it. Self-preservation's a big thing. But what he says that he did is a very big deal. And what he says that the Masonics is the term that he uses, and how they are working in relation with the Bible. When he said that, it resonated because that was the exact same conclusion I had already come to. So here he is explaining that.
In 2003
So
and so on.
this was to finance the insurgencies, finance the saboteurs and the provocateurs.
You're talking about the real financial world. I mean, I call it the real financial world, who make it able to do whatever you want in this world, because most of the people on earth, you can buy them.
Yes.
You can blackmail them or buy them. It's one of them. There are only a few who will resist.
Yes.
Because we live all in a slavery system, so, and for them it's nothing.
Yes.
1 million not enough, 10 million. And that's still a joke in the real world.
Yeah. Very good.
But you mentioned a group, Masonics. That's a worldwide organization. But again, they are not the top. They are running a program, and they are like the BIS, like all the others, they are listening to the boss, the 8,500, the real powers.
Okay.
And about the real powers, it's not only earthly.
Right. Stop. So the real powers behind the 8,500 is we begin to deal with metaphysics here. Interdimensional intelligences, lower astral intelligences, extraterrestrial intelligences.
I discovered one thing about ourselves. We are multidimensional ourselves. We are multidimensional and also able to experience a lot of frequencies, all the frequencies. And what you can read in many old history, well, say holy books and history about native tribes and also, they all talk about this dualistic system. And they all talk about a light manifestation and a dark manifestation. And the financial system on this planet where I worked for is the main key, the main tool to do all the programs they want, because they have a program. And the Masonics, they have a spiritual mission. And the end goal of this whole thing is that they are following, maybe as one of the few groups on this earth, literally the Bible, especially also the Revelations about what's coming next.
Yes.
And you can see this in the recent history, like the rebirth of Israel. It was Palestine in 1948. Was the rebirth,
the state of Israel.
The state of Israel. It was all written in the prophecies.
Yes.
And they are running the show. When I was studying theology and I was studying the Bible, I was really devastated, like, wow, the miracles of God are happening here. Our almighty creator of heaven and earth is, wow, doing all this. No, it's not. So my old work in the old days, connecting with the new awareness in my new life, making matches all over the place about what's going on. And then later, people who were breaking the oath, Masonics, are making me more and more aware about this agenda. And the end game they're working on is to create the third temple in Jerusalem.
Rebuild the Temple of Solomon.
Exactly.
The Holy Land, basically returning to this
Yes.
Sabbatean cult.
Yes, and the Masonics, who were also working through political movements like the Nazis.
What the Masons are doing and their role in the scheme of things and their role in terms of the Bible. Now, Masons have a tie-in to Hiram Abiff, who helped build Solomon's temple. So King Solomon is tied into this as well. And it's not good. Now I'm going to interject another clip here. Listen to what Ronald Bernard has to say about sacrifice.
No, it's Masonic.
Yeah.
It's the Masonic.
Black, white, black, white,
Yeah,
black,
it's
white.
the Masonic thing. And again, also here, the BIS was one of the main keys in financing everything on earth.
In 1930, 31, early 30s, right?
That was the beginning. That was the beginning. But before the war and during the war, American industry was sitting there on the same table like we now, making deals with the Nazis.
U.S. Standard Oil and IBM and...
All these companies
right.
involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the battlefield, there we have the energy.
Right.
There was the
Blood
suffering.
sacrifice.
They were sacrificing children
Yes.
a lot.
Let's talk about this. Because essentially banking is the mechanics of control over humanity.
It's the main
Right.
one.
Yes.
It's really the main
But
one.
the objective of banking is to control and create scenarios where blood sacrifice takes place.
On top.
Because war, disease, and poverty equates to blood sacrifice at the
Yes.
collective level.
And this is all because of the bastards
Right,
who live out of this fourth dimension.
right,
This is about what I call the Luciferians.
right.
They call them also jinns and the fallen angels. Right. They have so many names. But they, on the moment we have a fight, an argument who is going out of control, we create negative emotions.
Yes.
And they live on it.
Yes.
They suck on it
Yes.
all the time because they are now also around
Yes.
us. They are everywhere.
Yes.
And especially in finance, because I did it a lot. Unfortunately, I did it a lot. I was serving them like hell. Because I was in the middle of financing also, I mean, it was not my money, but I arranged everything for them to create wars, to create actually all the sacrifice.
Now Christianity looks at Moses and they say he gave us the law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So Christian Moses, they look at him as also a leader, a savior, a type of Christ. So as the serpent was raised up, and if people looked at the serpent, they could have been healed. So too Christ was going to be lifted up on the cross, and that was a type and a shadow, a foretelling of what was to come. Well, Moses also introduced the Passover and sacrifice, the laws of redemption for the firstborn. If it was an animal, based on what the animal was, you had to sacrifice something in its place as part of that law, if it was male. And that was to be a law forever. So when people say Jesus Christ was the Redeemer, he paid for that. In Judaism today, they have a redemption offering that they pay if their son is the firstborn. So Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac because his God told him to do it. Sacrifice plays a huge role in this. I would argue society is built on sacrifice, and whatever evil is running this world harvests that sacrifice. Blood sacrifice is very much still in play. And for those who don't accept Jesus as the great and last sacrifice, it is 100% still in play. What did Kanye West say that his mom was sacrificed? And he listed off a whole bunch of celebrities who he says were sacrificed for admission, the cost of admission. It's a very serious game that's going on. So Moses gave that to Christianity. Blood sacrifice. Moses is the source of the written Torah. Moses is the source for the Oral Torah, which is the Babylonian Talmud. Moses is the source for the Zohar, which is Kabbalah Jewish mysticism. That's straight up MK Ultra information. How to break minds. Moses is the source for Satanism. Aleister Crowley and Mathers, in the documents they translated from King Solomon, has Moses who gave them the mysteries of Israel. Moses is the source. So for Christianity to laud and look at King Solomon and Moses as heroic figures, you might want to take some pause. The body of work that Moses offers to Christianity is substantially less than the body of work that he gives to Judaism and Satanism. So with that foundation, the 10 Commandments coming from him, but the 10 Commandments, those are good. In an interpersonal context, yes. In a master to slave context, even better. Population control, crowd control, globalism, that all falls at the feet of Moses. Revolutionaries, communism, all of that falls at the feet of Moses. Again, the Talmud, Zohar, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, sacrifice, blood sacrifice, all of that falls at the feet of Moses. So the body of work that Moses has given outside of the Bible, the Torah, is way bigger on the outside than it is on the inside. So pastors with an agenda, wresting, W-R-E-S-T-I-N-G, wresting the scriptures, twisting them for their own needs and ends. How many of these pastors are on the payroll of the cabal? How many are changing doctrines? I can show also rapture is a Jesuit doctrine. It's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's not going to be organic. It's going to be an artificial using their tech, which I will argue is Tesla tech. So there will be miracles worked, but they're not going to be organic. Another problem that I see happening in terms of Christianity, let's take the concept of resurrection. I really love the idea of resurrection. To me, it's super, I have a romantic mindset when it comes to it. To me, it is the ultimate in power. It's the ultimate in hope and nobility and ideals that I can live again in a perfect form, perfect body. And I am biased towards my Mormon roots. I love the idea of the human body. So to get it back to me is a big deal. But it is going to be sold to me, and I guarantee this happens. It's going to start. It's already started. But the idea, it's going to be omniscience of God. Omniscient is omniscience, all science. So they're going to come out and push what has been going on, these injections, upload your consciousness, singularity, become at one with the AI. That's how they're going to twist the concept of resurrection, is that, it has to be through our technology. And if you just upload your consciousness, you can live forever. It's coming. There's no doubt in my mind that that is how many sectarian religious groups are going to spin this so that they can play cabal ball. So again, with that foundation, I don't trust the Bible. King Solomon, straight up demonologist. But I don't accept that interpretation. I only believe what's in the Bible. You can't accept anything outside the Bible. Well, keep the blinders on. That's on you. I'm not going to stay a child. I'm not going to stay ignorant to the people that are killing us with invisible chains. So if you just limit yourself to the current Bible we have, and what does Bible mean? It means collection of books. Who put it together? The Catholic Church. How many books are missing out of the Bible? So if you are one of those who say that only truth resides in the Bible and nothing else, then this absolutely is not for you. Had I limited myself to the Bible alone, there's no way I could put the puzzle pieces together to what's going on in this hellscape. However, the cabal uses the Bible as the weapon against the slave class. I am 100% arguing we are the slave class, and that's from the Noahide laws. The 10 Commandments are for the slaves. The Noahide laws are for the slaves. Now, the Noahide laws are going to hijack the 10 Commandments because they are the cabal, the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, the Venetians, the Khazars, whatever you want to call them, Edomites, Jews. The idea of a Trinitarian God offends them beyond belief. The idea of Jesus offends them. Now, my thing with Jesus is I do accept that that is a Hegelian dialectic. If the king of the Jews is as attacked as he is, I would say he's a Trojan horse put in place to take the slings and arrows on behalf of the theatrical play being foisted upon us all. So many people are looking to a savior. So many people are looking to be saved. And I understand the want of comfort. I understand the want of safety. I understand the want of hope. But I think there are bigger things in play. I think there are bigger things outside of the Bible. I believe in God. I believe there is a God. Now, I will be biased. There's only one real doctrine that I do accept that I took from Mormonism. And some people would say it's Luciferianism. Some would say it's blasphemy. Some would say it's cult. But the doctrine is I am a child of God in the literal sense. As in, I am here on earth. I am learning. I'm doing what I can in the muck, trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm also growing. Well, I'm a child of God as well. That's not a big deal. Really? What does a kitten grow up to be? A cat. What does a puppy grow up to be? A dog. If I am a child of God, what am I going to grow up to be? I'm not going to settle to go into some heavenly place where I'm just doing orations or singing in a choir for eternity, praising his name. If that's what God wants, as a father to me, I look at my relationship with my son. I want what's best for him. I want to interact with him. I want to be his friend. I want to help him. I love him. I want to do what I can with what means I have available to give him a better shot at life. I want to teach him. I want to give him real information. I don't want to jerk his chain. I don't want to throw tests at him. I don't want trials of Abraham. I don't need any of that nonsense. I don't need to prove any loyalty from my son to me. There are very few things that my son could do that would make me sway on my love for him. I want to believe that I have as much unconditional love for my son as possible. Period. So I hope to be able to show him the ropes. I hope to give him a step up so that he doesn't make the same mistakes that I did, whether they were purposeful mistakes or whether they were out of ignorance that I just didn't know. I hope that I have a better grasp on things and give him more information than what my father gave to me. Now, my father did his best. He did what he thought was the way it should be. And I do respect him in so many ways of how he just lived unapologetically and authentically. Those are also characteristics I want to throw to my son. I want him to be as individual and unique as possible and to not conform. I will argue now that, and this is also religious, that in the last days, bad shall be called good, good shall be called bad. Dissent, disobedience, that's actually the virtue now of the good, I will argue. So some evangelicals, some Christians would go to the book of Revelations and say, you cannot add to or take away from the revelation, etc., etc. And then they will whisk away everything. When I was a Mormon on my mission, I was in Bulgaria, we ran into some evangelicals. And that's the technique, the tactic they would use to dismiss what was in the Book of Mormon. And though I don't accept the Book of Mormon as inspired doctrine, it does have some good stories. It does lay out a lot of the secret combinations in its words about how society is going and the hidden hand behind the scenes pulling the levers of power. There are a lot of there's a lot of patriotism in that book. There's a lot of love of family, love of freedom, love of country. The problem I have with the book is that the good guys lose at the end. I guess it's easier for me to accept extra biblical information just because I was born into it. However, if I had not kept studying extra biblical meaning outside of the Bible information, I wouldn't have put together the pieces of what's going on. And to me, when an evangelical, via his pastor, his or her pastor that says, don't study anything outside of the Bible, only truth is in the Bible, that's it, that plays right into the cabal's narrative because they don't want you to know their information. They don't want you to know that Moses was possibly Pharaoh Akhenaten, and through his heavy fist of monotheism collapsed the Egyptian empire. That he was a revolutionary, that Moses was rebellious, that Moses is the foundation of the Talmud and the Zohar. He is the foundation of sacrifice, blood sacrifice. To me, that concept, it's disgusting. I have no use for the concept of sacrifice in any form, unless it is taking one for the team, sacrificing of myself for my son, or for those people that I value. That to me is the only worthy sacrifice. But to require blood of anything, Leviticus can just be trashed in my opinion. King Solomon, he took his teachings. Moses learned his teachings from the Ethiopian dude Jethro, and that was the Canaanite information. King Solomon took his information. He was a demonologist. He is of the same lines as Moses. Abraham, how he handled himself with King Abimelech, that to me was ludicrous. And when a man comes up and says, "The Lord said to me," why, because it's written in a book, do I have to accept it? Why do I have to accept a single time that it says the Lord spoke to Abraham and that I have to give it credence? If I went around saying that, I'd be locked up. Well, I'm going to be locked up anyway at some point, but it's not for that. It's going to be because I'm dissenting. I do not accept the narrative that this entire civilization and society is trying to shove at me. I do not accept that I have to live under pedophiles asking me for taxes. If I limited my information to the Bible only, I would not be aware of the extra doctrines that Moses taught. I would not be aware that the Satanists, Aleister Crowley, Mathers, all of the acolytes, the Kabbalah, the rabbis, the Jewish mystics. Kabbalah to me is literally Satanism. I would not have known that that is all laid at Moses' feet. Moses to me is the ultimate weak link when it comes to us being corrupted and taken over. But yet somehow all of Christianity thinks he's just so virtuous and amazing. Yet he was the source that instilled and instituted sacrifice forever. Then Jesus showed up and supposedly fulfilled that law of sacrifice. But for those who do not accept Jesus, i.e. the Cabal, i.e. Judaism, even Islam treats Jesus way better than Judaism and the Talmud. And as a Christian, if you limit yourself to the Bible, you will never have a clue what invisible chains bind us. And that is from the invisible chains of Judaism. It's literally Talmudic doctrine that if you kill a goyim, Gentile, animal in human form, as long as you do it with a 1 degree separation of Kevin Bacon, and you are not the person that did it, but you put mechanisms in place to cause it, i.e. stock market collapse, i.e. cryptocurrency collapse, i.e. wars, i.e. finance, i.e. taxes, i.e. invisible chains that bind you that when they are pulled tight, you don't survive it, they're innocent. But even then in the Talmud, it's straight up that if they kill you as a non-Jew, it's fine. There's so much atrocity, racism, religious supremacy, slavery, pedophilia, murder. It's all outlined in the Talmud. And then it goes a step further in the Zohar. Transgenderism is another aspect of Judaism in the Talmud. 8 sexes. Originally I thought it was 6, but they break 2 of them down to have dual sides. So it's 8 verified sexes in the Talmud. If I limited myself to the Bible, I would have never known any of this. I would not have known the doctrine that Shema, which means to hear, but also is translated and interpreted to obey. I would have not known that Shema, oneness, singularity, is also tied to artificial intelligence. People are aware of it. People put pieces together. But without a full narrative or a full picture, we make excuses for who's doing it. And those excuses are getting good people killed. because we don't even know what we're fighting against. Oh, well, Satan. Yeah, but there are actual groups in place right now attacking us using the invisible chains, using social credit scores, using digital currencies that are going to come out, using social credit scores for corporations. That's ESG. And when you learn that all of these Noahide laws, the punishment is beheading. And I'm going to be doing a video on this. Trump, when he passed the Stafford Act, which is literally we are under FEMA control. So though white hats, though Q is stating that patriots are in control, well, we're under FEMA rule regardless. So I think a big January 6th is coming, and the patriots are targeted. And they're going to use some form of Trojan horse on us. But if I limited my belief to just the Bible itself, I would not have known about the concept of pre-Adam man. I wouldn't have known about the Noahide laws. I wouldn't have known that they are on the books in our legal system. I would not have known about Hugo Grotius in the 1600s, who put the Talmud as our basis for law. I would not have known that Judaism has a war against Amalek and that they consider Europeans, white people especially, as Amalekites, and that they must be destroyed on all fronts, using every tactic possible. And then we have the Trojan horses of the Ben Shapiros, Dennis Pragers. They talk a good game. Then they have the Shabbos Goyim of the Matt Walsh and the Jordan B. Petersons, who will talk a good game. But they will only keep us focused on the symptoms of the problems. And then instead of having somebody who can be a champion that we can get behind, we're thrown the Nick Fuenteses and the Kanye Wests. And though I don't disagree with what he says, I disagree how he articulates the message. It just shows me he is not lettered. He has not studied this information. He's been a product of it, and he's lashing out, and I understand. But the optics, and that's just it, you can't win. When you go to give grandma a cake, and yet the media can spin it that that's the worst, most evil thing in the history of mankind, and they can, we aren't going to win. And that's why I have issues with the Bible, because it is setting us up to be destroyed. The more we give attention, the more we jump into Revelation, the more we have a secret hope for things to come to pass, all in hopes that a Savior will show up because of it. That to me is a recipe for disaster. So when they do bring out a Messiah character, I'm not going to trust it. And then even if they bring out another Messiah character, I'm not going to trust it. Now, if I'm wrong, and the Jesus character is real, he does show up, well, because I am a child of God with a soul and the capacity to change my mind, I wholly expect to have a sit down. And as Isaiah said, though thy sins be as scarlet, let us reason together, and then they can be white as snow. I wholly expect God to have half a bit of patience and understanding to look at where I'm coming from, and to show a little bit of compassion and empathy to understand why I chose to believe and live how I lived. If not, and it's just a black or white, damned or damned, and when you can whittle down belief and religion to just one concept of grace and everything else is thrown off the table and doesn't matter, that to me is ultimate cop-out. That to me is like welfare religion. That's like just getting on EBT, just milking the system, not even trying. If it's real fantastic, then I have nothing to worry about because in theory, back in the day, I've accepted Jesus. So technically I'd be saved regardless. Oh, but it doesn't work that way. We don't know how it works. Nobody knows how it works. All I know is that I do not trust these people. Until next time.